your adulting coach. I help autistic young adults and their families systemize adulting together. Today's struggle comes from our newest member at the Art of Adulting. Lisa's son is struggling to complete a class. And she shares with us that it's an operating class that he's taking the second time. He withdrew the first time. The first professor was too disorganized. So the new professor, head of the computer science department, gave him an incomplete. He still doesn't feel like the professor is willing to help him succeed. He needs this class for his senior project and to graduate with a BA. So let's sort this one out together using Barb Avila's system of first understanding what's going on, then connecting with ourselves and with our autistic young adults, and then finally figuring out what to practice to help move through this problem and create what we want in our lives. So when we're trying to understand what's going on, we want to look at this from what would I be thinking if I had an autistic brain? Just do the very best we can to understand what having an autistic brain, what the difference that having an autistic brain makes. So, and we also want to keep in mind where the direction we're heading in. Stephen Covey is just a classic in the area of life design, and he suggests that we need to know where we are going so that we better understand we are now, and so that the steps we take are always in the right direction. So as we look at where we are now, we're understanding that there's something about the structure of this class, the way that our autistic young adult is thinking about it and about the professor, and what, and kind of trying to break apart what's really happening in this situation. We also want to keep in mind, of course, that our objective is to help them practice the set of mental tools that help them manage their thoughts, emotions, and actions so they can achieve goals set by them for them. So that's important to keep in mind in terms of the way that we approach the problem, because as the parents of young adults, our role is to encourage, to warn, and to be consulted. I'll never forget Googling these three words, because I had first learned them from Richard and Linda Iyer, who wrote Teaching Your Child Responsibility. And they actually borrowed this from the British monarchy. The Queen of England, this is her role. She encourages, she warns, and she's consulted, but she doesn't solve the problems. That's what Parliament is for. She doesn't create the laws. That's what her government is for. The government of England is for. And I think it's a wonderful metaphor for us to separate ourselves from our role and what our autistic young adults' role is. And even though there could be some unpleasant consequences as a result of some of the choices that our autistic young adults make, we need to make sure that they make those mistakes, because that's how we learn. So my suggestion is that we somehow facilitate a brain dump, a thought download, getting some of the thoughts out from his head on a piece of paper or somewhere separate from him. One of my favorite ways to do this is to create a transcript of my young adult's thoughts using Otter. Actually, I should put that down here just so you have that option. Using Otter. .ai, OTTER.ai. It's an app you can download onto your phone or onto a laptop or a desktop, and it will record the voice and transcribe it. It gives you 600 minutes free per month. So it's a great tool that doesn't cost you a thing unless you're like me and use it all the time. So I highly suggest that we get all the thoughts that that your son is having out on, out of him and recorded somewhere. Electronically is always helpful because then we can't lose them, those thoughts. And then we start to sift through those thoughts. And the way, some of our kids have a hard time with telling us what's going on in their heads, because that, input processing is the input, they're taking the input and fine, the processing is doing well, but it's the output, the speaking, the recording, what it is that they need to talk, that how the output is the hard part for them. So that's why while we're recording, if they want to do this with us, we can just keep reflectively listening to them to get as many of their thoughts out as possible. It just sounds like, it seems like, or it sounds like. That's how you open it. And then you reflect their feeling in one word. And sometimes it's best just to say uncomfortable versus comfortable, not try to get down to the nuances of the various emotions. Although it is also helpful just to know this, the six. And there's lots of different versions of what the six major emotions are. But reluctant, afraid, ashamed, lonely, frustrated, all of those feelings can also be reflected, but one at a time, because of this class, of this professor, of this assignment, whatever it is. That's that kind of reflective listening that helps them, their brain, connect with our brain. They feel more seen, and you can just see them visibly relax when they feel like they're being heard. I'm really hoping that this process will help get a lot of the thoughts out onto the table, because what we're really shooting for is that our autistic young adults have confidence that they can solve their problems. And this is the continuum of the virtues continuum. So we want to stay in the middle. That's coined by Socrates a long time ago. So we want to stay in the middle. We want to stay in the right amount of confidence. We have too little confidence, that's where we have fear and lies. If we have too much confidence, that's where we get prideful and act out, and it's also full of fear and lies. So what we really want to do is stay in this virtuous mean in the middle. We want to help them have the confidence that they know that they can tackle these problems. So now that we've got it all out on the table, let's sort of connect with them. And Barb advises us always, Barb Avila advises us to, when we're trying to get out of the crisis, we want to get low, we want to get quiet, we want to get predictable, and we want to use short sentences. And if we can make some of our words visible by taking notes or by using an Otter app, that helps, because then we have two senses taking in the information, the sight and the sound. And our autistic young adults can focus together. We can create joint attention on this problem, which, is sometimes with the brains they get, they're easily distracted, especially if they're in a high emotional state, if they're very uncomfortable and highly energized on this. And then if we can take the time, we just have, maybe we don't do this at one setting, but maybe we just go to the first two, where we separate out the fact from the story, the situation from the thought, that we just separate out. Okay, well, let's go back up to the top and look at some of these thoughts. That the professor was too disorganized. Is that a fact? I think it's the story. The new professor gave him an incomplete. That's a fact. We could prove that. He doesn't feel like the professor is willing to help him succeed. Yeah, that one's definitely the story. But the fact that he needs the class for the senior project and graduate with a BA, that's a fact. So as we separate out the thought from the story, we recognize that our stories are optional, and we can think of any situation a million ways, and there's got to be one that could be more helpful to them than that. So if we can help them sort things out between the situation, the facts, the thought, the story, the emotion, what's going on inside, comfortable, uncomfortable, and then the actions. What are the actions that emotion inspires? I know that when our autistic young adults are struggling with a class, sometimes the emotion becomes resistance avoiding, critiquing, finding everything that's wrong with the way that things are going. And that's the kind of brain we all have. We're always scanning out there of what is wrong outside of us. Trouble is, trying to change what's outside of us is very frustrating. It's much more powerful to change the way we're thinking and acting, thinking, feeling, and acting. Our thoughts, emotions, and actions are in our control, are in our power to change. So when we practice this proactive partnering with our autistic young adults, what we're looking to do is to help them solve the problem. But they're solving it because, frankly, we don't any longer have the solution. It has to be, the actions have to be taken by them so that the results can be created by them. And this is a real transition between what's going on, what used to go on in school when things were clearly defined for us as to what needed to be done, to now that they are in the post-secondary education process and the work world. We have to understand, we just don't have the power any longer. And that's not an easy thing to accept because we'd sure like to solve it. But in fact, we want them to solve it so that they have the practice creating these solutions that are going to work for them. Because things are going to go wrong in life. These are the 5 things we cannot change, from a book by David Rico. Things change and end. They do, he will not always be enrolled in this class. There will be other things happening. Things don't always go according to plan. He may have to take the class a 3rd time. I mean, I'm hoping that's not the case, but it certainly could happen. Life is not always fair. You do get assigned professors that just don't get it at all. They don't get, what kind of brain he has and what works for him. And they don't think that they should have to modify the way that they teach to accommodate. It just happens, pain, this kind of pain is part of life, and people are not loving and loyal all the time. Those are the 5 things we have to accept, and they're also outside of our control. So then it's how we think about it that matters. And the way we think about it together can really create a solution. So if we talk about, okay, we've got to get this class done. What are the specifics that need to be done? Let's get to the facts. How does he think and feel about it? How do you think and feel about it? In short, succinct sentences, hopefully with something visual to help create that joint attention where you order it or write it down on a piece of paper, scribe for him, so that he notices that you are really paying attention to what's going on for him. Big, big connection tool. And then, okay, what can we agree that we're going to experiment with that just might work, and see if it will, and go from there. So I hope that this is helpful. I noticed that I forgot to put my end slide here. Hold on one second, I'll add it right here. Please come visit me at www.lynncdavison.com/blog for a transcript of this video and the resources that I've mentioned in here, links to those. I really would love to help you work through these struggles that we have all had. We definitely appreciate you sharing them with us, because so many of us are in the middle of the exact same struggle you're in. So join us at the Art of Adulting, and welcome, Lisa, to our group, our program, and I can't wait to meet you inside. Bye for now.